When I bought this Golf, it actually looked like a project that were a bit bigger than I could handle, to be honest. It had water in the boot, it had rust where I didn't see rust, it had dents on the doors where I didn't see dents on the doors. It really did start to look like a project that I wish I'd never started, but now after a week or so of tinkering with it on and off, it's definitely looking promising. Basically spend £500 on a car, do it up, see if you can sell it for profit, put all that money back into the next project and see how far we can go with it. This Golf, when it arrived, I thought there's no way that I'm going to be able to fix this, but as I mentioned before, when you break it down into one problem at a time, it actually becomes doable, and it's come a long way, to be honest. There's been work that I haven't expected, and some of it's been easier than I thought it would be. Been quite a lot of good progress, and I'll show you it now during this video. First things first on this car is addressing the brakes. Now, when I actually bought this car, I bought it off a garage, and the reason that it was so cheap was basically they told me that the braking system had completely failed, and I had to sign or actually send an email to say that I knew that the car wasn't roadworthy and I know that it shouldn't be on the road before they'd even sell me it. I'd actually done quite a bit of research on these cars prior to even trying to buy it, and found out that there's actually two washers under the brake pedal that if there's been a load of water in the car, they rust up and actually start causing the brake pedal to stick when you press the brake down. It doesn't release properly because the spring isn't powerful enough to overcome the rust. So it turns out, luckily, this is actually what the problem was. But after seeing the price of discs and pads for this Volkswagen, I actually decided to replace all four corners anyway, just so it looks better and for my peace of mind, to be honest. And not only that, but I knew I was going to be taking these off to paint the brake calipers in this enamel paint that's really quite easy to use. You just sand off the excessive rust, make sure the caliper's clean and the brake surfaces, and then use a paintbrush essentially, and it kind of flows out really nicely and just makes the brakes look better. So new discs, new pads, caliper paint. Obviously all this because I want to put better wheels on this car, and you're going to see through the wheels to see the brakes and the calipers. So it's it were kind of a must. So this was the first thing I set about doing on the front of the car, ready for the new alloys to arrive. I think it ended up costing me £80, 80 quid for the disc and pads for front and rear, and that also came with the pad sensors. So to be honest, for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer, and I think you'll agree. It makes everything just look better, and obviously then when you're selling a car, you know the brakes are good. You know it's going to be okay. Now it's time to start pulling it apart, seeing what we've got to work with. I've sourced a new front bumper. I'm not quite sure which model it's off, but it's not a GTI, and I don't think it's a GT TDI either. But it's definitely a much nicer bumper and definitely in much better condition because this front bumper on this car's scratched to hell. So as I mentioned before in the last video, these leak somewhere down under the bumper. There's a vent. So before I go ripping it all apart and seeing if that's actually what's wrong with it, I'm going to do a little quick test on it. So I'm going to pour a load of water over the roof and see if it comes out. I've removed the boot lining inside, so we'll see. Yeah. Yeah, it's pouring in like you wouldn't believe. And that's only a tiny bit of water as well. Imagine if it rained all night. That's ridiculous. What a massive design flaw that is. Now it actually looks like it's coming out a little bit higher than that vent, so I'm wondering if it's actually the backlight. I think I'm just going to have to take it all apart and do a bit more exploring, but at least we know that's where the water's getting in now, so it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to fix and get it dried out, because it's soaked in there and it just can't keep happening because it's going to cause all the electrics to go all funny. So first things first, we'll get it stripped down and see. I will come back to that problem because there's now the front end's off. I actually want to make a little bit of progress on it and start getting some parts back on. And while it's obviously there's no painted surfaces that are at risk of getting scratched by doing this, I want to deal with these lights that are obviously gone very milky, and it's there's plenty again on YouTube of people doing this. I think every Golf on the planet will have to have this done at some point in its life. It's just something to do with the plastics and the way that it weathers, but it ends up looking really dull and your headlights don't work properly. So basically what we're doing here is we've gone over it with some 1500 grade wet and dry just by hand, then followed up by a 2000 on the dual action sander, a 3000 on the dual action sander, and now we're on to using a rotary buffer with some rubbing polishing compound, and it makes so much difference. For like 10-15 minutes work, it looks like a brand new headlight compared to the other side. It really does. So that's one side done. We'll move on to the next and then start putting it back together again. So let's return now to this leaking problem in the boot, or around the boot area. So basically I've taken the backlights off already. They're quite straightforward. There's a connector on each light, two 10mm nuts on each light, and then that's it. They just pop out. And you have to take the lights out on these Golfs to be able to get to the two torque heads that are on top of the bumper mounting bracket. Once you've got that off, it's just a case of finding all the little torques. I think there's 4 under each wheel arch. There's 3 across the bottom of the bumper, and there'll be a few little rusted ones, a few that are a bit tricky to get out. But once you've got all them out, you just drop the bumper straight off. And then the only thing you have to deal with is the number plate lights that are still attached. But there's just a simple clip. Right, now I've got the bumper off. I can't actually really see exactly where this water's coming in from, so this is like the bumper carrier bracket, so I think I'm just going to take that off and have a little explore. From what I've seen on the internet, it's this vent here, but it doesn't look too bad for the amount of water that's coming in it, so we'll just take a few bits off and see. Right, so there's nothing under there, so it's got to be that. It has to be. Yep, it's definitely that. Definitely. All that water just came straight into the boot, so there's obviously a seal there somewhere that just doesn't work. And I've seen so many videos online of people moaning about this from Volkswagen, all the different models as well, not just this one. So that's it, we'll pull that out, clean it all up, put a new seal on it, probably silicone it in. With a bit of luck, that should stop the water leak. There we go. Put them flaps back on, but that's essentially the problem. That doesn't look straight though. I wonder if it's had a knock. There's a little bit of damage on that bumper. Might just try and straighten that up first, get it all cleaned up, get that fixed, and put a load of sealant around it and put it back in, all dry. Well, it's all out. I've managed to straighten that little panel there. It's quite weak metal, to be fair, so if someone has just nudged the back, well, you can tell, I know someone's nudged the back end because you can see it in the bumper, but it did bend that out of line, but I've put it back to close enough. So that's all cleaned up. You can see all the water in there, look. Ridiculous. But it's going to get some form of waterproof sealant and a lot of it, and then we'll stick that back on. I'll do the same to the other side and then put it all back together. Hopefully that'll be it. Can dry it all out, give it another wet vac, There we go. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but I couldn't care less. Better than water inside the cab. So now I'll go on to the other side, do exactly the same thing, and then start rebuilding it. I've just got this much water out of it already, and it's still going. That's full, so I'm going to have to empty that and try again. I reckon it's going to probably get about 2 of them, and that's only one side of the car, so it clearly leaks quite badly. Right, the weather's let up a little bit finally for us, so now the bits are painted and sourced. I've kind of done a dry fit on a few of the parts, the wings and stuff like that, because they are spurious, so sometimes they're a little bit iffy on fitting, but these actually look quite good. All the clips seem to fit, stuff like that. The bumper isn't supposed to be on this model, so it has taken a little bit of fiddling, a little bit of cutting and stuff, but it'll go. So I think it's time to start getting it all back together now, see what it looks like. I know the paint matches, it's pretty good. I know cameras show it to be, if it's even slightly off, the camera's going to show it, so in person it looks fine. We'll get it back together, see what it all looks like. One thing I will say for Volkswagen is I do like how many fixing points things like your wings and stuff have got. It it really helps build a strong car. Plus, it gives you a lot of play with how things line up. With all the different mounting points, you can manipulate the wing itself to kind of conform to obviously the shape of the door and then the shape of the bonnet and the A pillar and things like that. So it gives you a lot of good scope really, which is nice because I've worked on a couple of cars in the past and lining things like this up, especially like the Honda that's behind the Golf, lining them wings up is an absolute joke. You just don't want to go where you want them to. On now with the front bumper, like I mentioned before, it's not actually for this model, so it didn't fit 100%. So there were a couple of mounting points deep underneath it that did need changing slightly, a little bit of modification with a grinder, but it all worked out in the end and it fits lovely. So happy days with that one. Then we're just doing a loose fit with a bonnet for now, and then I'll line it up later because there's still the problem inside the car with the actual bonnet release catch, so I need to figure that out before I actually shut the bonnet because I don't want to end up getting it stuck down. Other than a load of lining up, which I'm going to do tomorrow, that's kind of the front end back on. I'm not going to shut the bonnet yet, obviously, because I need to line that up properly because the chances are if I slam it shut, it's not opening back again. But yeah, I'm liking it. Give it a new look. I've got the 2 worst affected by corrosion wheels back from the shop blaster. So in the next video I'll show you what I did to refurb these. I've already refurbed 2 front ones. This is them. But I'll do the ones that were shop blasted and show you how we got them back to that stage. In typical me fashion, I wasn't quite happy with the colour match on the front and I had tons of paint left, so I thought, do you know what, sod it, I'm going to repaint the bumper and the bonnet and the wing mirrors and a few other little bits, so you'll get to see that in the next video. I hope you've liked watching this, and if you want to see how far this car goes and this whole project goes, hit that subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.